good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are. Welcome to another session of the Serene View. My name is Serene, I'm your host. And today with me, I have Lindsay. We are going to have a constructive argument. Now, if you have never heard of a constructive argument and you cannot imagine it, a constructive argument is all about helping social media to bring in different viewpoints on every single topic. So today with me to be my argue partner is Lindsay. And Lindsay is, well, of all my guests, I would say Lindsay is the one guest whose name I dare not pronounce. I was just telling her that I was sure I'll get her surname wrong. So Lindsay, would you like to introduce yourself to us and actually tell us how do you pronounce your name?
Yes, no problem. So I'm from the UK, but I'm living in the Netherlands, and I married a Dutchman who has this very unpronounceable surname that I've got now. And the trick is the UI in Dutch is pronounced Au. So it's Uittenbogaard, that's my name. And just a little bit about myself in the context of this discussion is that I started off working in small organizations with teams of about 10 people. And I found in those organizations that it takes quite a lot of effort, but you can still connect with people in terms of what is happening, why are we doing this, what are we about to do, what then happened, and how do we look at that, and what next? And with 10 people, it's doable. Then I went to work in a larger organization, a multinational, which is what brought me to the Netherlands, actually, and different story. With so many people, I just couldn't get that clarity, couldn't find, the real connection between people that I missed and that I felt was so essential to teamwork. So that's the kind of inspiration behind this bit anyway. So back to you. Oh, you're on mute.
This is like the one phrase that I have been most told about. And yes, okay. So this is like the fourth time I'm mute on live stream. But anyway, I was going to say today what we're going to talk about is we are going to talk about alignment. So what is alignment? What is mental fog or misalignment? And really, is it possible for a team to be truly aligned? Or is it like, not even desirable? Should we avoid that and all be independent thinkers? So Lindsay has, I understand you have a couple of definitions you want to get us through first about alignment.
Yeah, how long do I have for that bit?
Well, we can take all the time you want, actually. I won't stop you. You can take all the time you want. And for those of you who are listening in to us, just introduce yourself, let us know who you are. And if you object, especially if you object to anything we say, like online, straight away type it in and let us know. Okay, so Lindsay, over to you.
Great. Well, ironically, this kind of mental fog, this alignment piece, it's all about constructive challenge. So I really love this opportunity, Serene, and I'm going to take you through bits of research and some definitions. It will just take a few minutes, but I find it absolutely fascinating. The first bit is from decades ago. It's still true today. You've probably heard about it, social constructionism. It's about the fact that people have to socialize and make sense of their world through language with others. It's an essential part of sharing meaning. And that's just a backdrop, because if you look at the layers of how people exchange meaning doing that, there's this model that has, if you go from the left to the right, it shows that, between what somebody thinks and what they can put into words and actions, then what they say and do and what other people hear and how they interpret that and the meaning they understand from that, it becomes clear that, it's a challenge to share meaning. With very simple things, this is possible, of course, but in organizations where there are dynamic, complex environments with a lot of diversity, this is really bad. And then I come to this definition of fog. So this is more about, really our own definition here. I'm working with a company called Mirror Mirror, and we have a diagnostic around alignment. And we look at fog in terms of, I wouldn't call it mental fog, actually. I'm going to challenge that wordage to start with. But the fog that we're talking about is in that sense-making process, all of the assumptions and the ambiguity and the biases that people bring to bear, which can really cloud the meaning here. So for an example, we're going digital. This was a real phrase in an organization in one of those ambiguous large organizations I worked in the telecoms industry, actually, where this phrase literally for months and months was going about. And you can imagine that the board of directors had plenty of opportunity to face socially construct their meaning of these words to make complete sense in the business context. But when it starts filtering down, of course, people have got very different ways of looking at things, and nobody knew what was going on, actually. And I think this happens quite a lot. So the impact of all of this misalignment, I think, is, disconnects. People saying yes, but not actually, behaving incongruent with that sentiment. People doing conflicting things. Things, therefore, taking more time and energy to get done, delays to decisions because people aren't able to see eye to eye and make those decisions. The cooperation is poor. I mean, you name it. Everybody has seen this kind of stuff. It's silos, it's animosity, it's blame. Yeah.
Sorry, I just wanted to interrupt you because I'm getting feedback that the slides are blurred and they can't see. They can't see very well. Oh, yes. Slides are blurred. Okay. So maybe if you could just go back, what do you want to see? We'll go back a little bit. I think it's more the words, I think.
I think the narrative makes sense of it. I'm really sorry that these slides are blurred because they look perfect for me and in the screen that I'm seeing. So I think,
yes,
please try then. This is a classic meaning transfer issue. No, but let me just, unless there's something technical we can do, I think
yeah,
I'll just
no,
continue.
I mean, I don't think there's technical. So I think Roy says it's not blurred. So Roy says it's not blurred, but Warren says it's blurred. So I tell you what, would you mind to share your slides at a later time, if you don't mind that?
Absolutely fine.
Yeah, so we'll share the slides with you, then you can pour over it, especially the small words. Yeah.
I'm just going to put my email address in the chat, and you can email me if you want a copy of these slides.
Sure. All right. Okay, then. Let's just move on, and then I will try and type. I will try and type the words into banners to see if that helps a little bit. Yes, please.
By the way, I still got a couple more slides, if that's all right. Okay, so I'll just continue.
Sure.
The problems then caused by misalignment are usually kind of attributed to specific things like, oh, it must be the leadership. It must be, our processes need improving. It's, the employer brand isn't strong enough. It's, and of course it could well be those things, but in the end, misalignment is more fundamental. It's about confusion, wasted time, money, and opportunity, diminished productivity, then it's demotivation. It's basically conflict. It leads to reduced performance and unexpected results. So you cannot get more fundamental than this. I feel really, really strongly that this is something we all need to talk about. And I'll present my kind of statement for challenge in a second. Going on from this then, the current situation is that there's more complexity, more change going on. So there's more things to align on. Engagement has typically tried to deal with this because with employee communications, and with my 15-year experience in corporate communications, I know that it does quite a good job of creating some kind of backdrop. It is cynically viewed, but it's definitely not helping people align because it's often generic and one way. And then enterprise social networks. You remember Yammer, Microsoft, SharePoint. I mean, that's great for kind of transacting information and connecting people, but it's not about alignment or clarity. And it's only going to get worse. The future of work is diverse teams, dispersed teams, the remote teams that we're all living in today, short-term staff, freelance staff, more automation. There is more scope for misalignment and more need to align. So just back to a few more pieces of research before I stop with these slides. The most influential research for me is Team Effectiveness by Professor Van den Bosch in Eindhoven and Antwerp University, who showed that behaviors, alignment is linked strongly with learning behaviors in areas like psychological safety, task cohesion, group potency, and interdependence. And the reason why these behaviors create the conditions for alignment is because, quite frankly, it's logical. If people are feeling safe, if they can rely on people, if they're confident in other people and in the team, they can open up. They want to learn from each other. They will be influenced by each other. They're not so defensive or so closed. So those learning behaviors are key. The next piece about the research is neuroscience. You know, our brains are prediction machines. We need to make sense of things before we take action. And if we can't do this, we find an assumption to use as a basis. So, for example, imagine you come into the office one morning, you're actually going into a physical office, imagine that, and there's a window and it's open and nobody else is there. The laptops are all there, nothing seems to be missing. What's happened? What your brain is doing is your brain is distracted by this question over and over again until it reaches an assumption as a placeholder before you can get on with the rest of your day without being so distracted. And your assumption might be, well, that'll be John. He actually usually last time the window was left open, it was him. Last thing at night, the night before, must talk to him about that. So what's happening is that you are reaching an assumption. Now, the truth could be that Janice came in already. She opened the window because it was stuffy and she's popped out to get a coffee. So the next piece of research I want to go to links to that. Conflicts in the workplace, 80% of conflicts occur at work because of assumptions people have made up about what's happening and why, and then used as the basis of actions. So we know that these kind of assumptions, this fog, this misalignment is causing problems. And then finally, in collaboration, let's go back to the remote workplace. People working remotely are 2.5 times more likely to perceive mistrust and incompetence and broken commitments, and they report taking 5 to 10 times longer to address their concerns. So, you know, put all of this together, and my basic premise for this discussion is, so we can stop the slides now, my basic premise for this discussion is that we keep thinking in terms of individuals. We have individual responsibilities. We have individual performance targets. We have individual personality assessments. But there's a huge opportunity to move from the me to the we position and look at what is going on between people. So I would like to be challenged now, please.
So first I was muted, and then after that I wasn't in the stream even. So yes, well, a couple of things I really wanted to say, right? I mean, we were talking about how all these misalignment is the root of all these problems, and all of these issues stem from misalignment. And there are probably a couple of ideas that have come up. The first is, first, really, I wanted to know whether it's possible. Okay, so I think there's the possible and then there's the desirable. Is it possible for us to be aligned? Because really, when it comes to, kind of what you're looking at, what I'm looking at, is I am perceiving what I think you are thinking. So how far is it possible for us to be aligned? And secondly, is it even desirable? Is it more a group thing, or should we be independent thinkers and never mind about this alignment thing? What do you think?
From the work that we've done, in terms of possible, it's never possible to be fully aligned, and it's not actually relevant to be fully aligned. I think there are many, many alignment gaps that we've got between us that we just don't even matter. I mean, for example, behind your screen, there's a picture, and there's a painting with some blue on it. Somebody might see that as green. I mean, it doesn't really matter, does it? We're just here talking about something else. So 100% alignment is neither necessary or possible. But it's the alignment about the important things that is possible these days, because there are ways, like I've said, there's behaviors that we can use. There's also skills that we can build up, but there are also tools to help us align. So my answer to that question is absolutely yes.
So do you think that because we can't be fully aligned, and so you feel that it isn't important for us? I mean, so we only need to be aligned in like kind of a couple of things? And the rest of it, do you think we will even want to be aligned at all, especially if it's something that's very important?
Well, I think the interesting thing about alignment is that you don't know where the alignment gaps are because they sit between people. So how are you to know where the alignment gaps are unless you discover them? And it's that process of identifying alignment gaps that is the huge part of it, because as soon as you become aware of it, of course, then you can start to address it through conversation. So spotting alignment gaps is the tricky thing.
Okay. So is it possible, Warren asked, for some people or groups to be aligned on some level and yet at the same time misalign on different levels?
Yeah, totally. And alignment is very unique to each team. And I'm talking about teams because that's where people share a context, they share goals. And so there is a requirement for them to be aligned to those around the challenges that they are sharing. So they could, for example, be very aligned on what is the team purpose, because they could have spent a lot of time on that. Maybe it's very clear, maybe it's very simple, maybe they've worked on it a lot. But at the same time, they could be completely misaligned on, well, how are they going to deliver to that purpose? So misalignment will manifest different ways for different teams. And you'll find that the teams that are in the most simple, straightforward situations, especially if they've got mature processes and mature ways of looking at how they interact and collaborate and understand things, their alignment issues may not be very big. But teams who interact a lot, teams who do have complex and fast-moving situations, there's a lot of scope for misalignment there.
Well, we have a couple of very interesting questions and comments. So Warren asked this, which I actually think is quite true, because who gets to decide? I had an earlier conversation about sense making and decision making, right? The person who decides then sets the kind of the context for it all. So who gets to decide what needs to be aligned? And actually, Colin has thrown in something interesting, but let's look at them one at a time. Because, I think it's, I don't know who it is, but I think it's Tiffany who was asked, how can Colin, elaborate on this? So let's look at the Warren's one, and then we'll look at this in a while. Colin, write a bit more. Yes.
Well, I'm really into servant leadership and that whole idea of empowerment. I think the people who need to decide what's important are the people in the team themselves. I think the worst thing you can do is bring in a consultant to look at some data around where the team is or isn't aligned and say, okay, I think you need to do this, that, and the other. I think a team needs to look at their own alignment data, because you can ask them questions and compare the responses. That's the alignment tooling. And the resultant responses will tell you where the gaps are, and there'll be lots of gaps. And they need to prioritize the top 4 or 5 that will make the biggest impact themselves. And that's a facilitation. That's to be led by a facilitator, as far as I'm concerned, the alignment process.
Okay. So would you agree that it's not being aligned that's important, it's actually seeking alignment that is important?
I would not agree with that, because I think what's real is what is actually happening. It doesn't matter what intentions people have. What matters is what is actually happening. And if people are not aligned in practice, then how are they to be as effective as possible? So seeking alignment is important, but the two together is most important.
Okay. I mean, I would also love for Colin to kind of elaborate it, because Tiffany also will like that as well. And Royce has brought up something, right? So what role does stress or anxiety play in misalignment? This is Barbara Schiff at Stanford University will argue that if you're stressed, your brain will not allow you to be curious or innovative. Consequently, if stress exists within the team, can they find alignment? And I will throw one more thing in, which is there a team truly that is not at all stressed?
That's a really good point. It's just like alignment. There is no black and white. Everything is in the middle. And thank you for that question, Roy, because stress and anxiety makes, with the work that we've done, that would resonate a lot with our experience, is that stress and anxiety can really close people down, make people more defensive. They're less likely to open up. They're less likely to behave in learning ways that that indeed promote curiosity and innovation. If stress exists, I was talking to one of our experts, practitioners, a facilitator who was speaking about anxiety, who was saying that it's really interesting the way that people transfer anxiety to each other. They can do that in blame. They can do that by assigning responsibility to things in their heads.
Entanglement of minds is called. I love the phrase. Right.
What's it called?
Entanglement of minds. That no mind exists on its own, right? The very fact that I'm here with you, actually not just with you, but with Roy, with Warrior, with Colin, with Tiffany, and with Guan, tells all our minds are entangled now, and then we will be like influencing each other. So
I love that phrase.
Sure.
Thank you. I'm going to take that down because the way that he was describing it is that when people try to transfer their anxiety, people can either internalize it and take it on for themselves, or they can just acknowledge it, or they can reject it. And really, an expert facilitator will be able to hold the anxiety in the room and empathize with it, understand it, and take it, if you like, from people so that it can open them up to fully engage. So I think a facilitator can really help anxious teams align, because they can hold that anxiety, allowing teams to free up. And awareness can go a long way. And asking people to discuss the reasons for their anxiety, because some of those anxiety reasons are conflicts which represent misalignment. So it's about the maturity of the discussion and the skills in the room.
Ryan has brought up a very interesting point, which is could misalignment actually be useful, right? Would being like aligned, would all of us being aligned create an echo chamber of sorts? Because there have actually been, research looking at all this corporate culture and so on, when actually what got us here will not keep us here or get us to where we want to go, right? So a lot of the times is this alignment, we are all aligned with each other and we do not want to rock the boat. That's actually going to kill us.
Well, that's a really interesting question, because we've found that there are 4 kinds of misalignment. There's kind of alignment around the structure of the organization, the processes. There's information misalignment, where there's just something hasn't been shared or it's wrong. There's perception misalignment, which is what we're mainly talking about. But there's also what we call anti-team alignment, or the dark side of alignment, where people are purposefully creating or perpetuating misalignment for gain. It could be well-intended or not. It could be conscious or not. So it could be useful depending on what perspective you're looking at it from. So misalignment, when it's well-intended, could be something like somebody withholding information from a team because they know that it will bring on anxiety, like potential changes in the organization that may have consequences for the team that people might not like. Now, that can be useful as a holding point for a leader to choose the right moment for something. So that's a misalignment that could be useful. But there's plenty more misalignments that can be useful for somebody's individual personal gain that is not useful for the organization, like pretending that a PowerPoint slide pack that they are showing was originated by them. I mean, that's creating a misalignment. That is not good really for the person who actually did the slide pack. So it depends whose point of view you're talking from and the purpose of this, but it's a very good question.
Well, Colin has come back to a little bit clarify what he just said, which is that the value is in discussing what is out of alignment and then to decide where the misalignment needs to be resolved. That it is possible to disagree on some situations and still move ahead. And actually, since we've just talked about Warrior's misalignment, that it is possible that some misalignment is actually useful. So that's what he meant by it's not the alignment, it's about the seeking of it.
Well, that's maybe where then we agree, Colin, because alignment doesn't mean everybody has to think the same thing. And it doesn't mean everybody has to agree. It just means they have to be aligned on the course of action that they will be taking as a team in order to make progress. So it's good that people have different points of view. And it's great that people can discuss what's out of alignment and decide and look at where that needs to be resolved. And that's what I'm sort of proposing here as the missing piece in today's organizations, where people are so focusing on individuals and so focusing on progress, that this piece about, well, how are we collectively moving together is just, I mean, it's not missing altogether, but that piece about misalignment is lost. And they don't have to disagree on everything. They just have to get behind key decisions and commit to working together as a team to deliver.
Well, Tiffany has, I know it's this LinkedIn user, it's Tiffany. Tiffany says that a lot of the times these problems that you're highlighting, which is the issue of, misalignment and so on, are actually gold mines or possibilities. I mean, a lot of the mistakes, and the classic one is the 3M, sticky patch, right? A lot of these mistakes, a lot of these problems, a lot of these issues actually serve to further the organization. And Warren has given him his support.
Yeah, I totally agree, because a lot of people are scared of conflict. They think about conflict in terms of closing things down, minimizing it. The very last thing they want to do is have everybody finding more conflict together, which is counterintuitive, actually, because usually what we find is that there are, they feel like they're going to open up the can of worms, but the can of worms is actually quite small, and the worms are dealable with, and there are probably only 3 or 4 significant worms to be dealing with. And as soon as you know what they are, then you're better off knowing what they are and being able to deal with them than, keeping blind, staying blind, having them in the blind spot. I've got a few slides here that I want to show about some alignment data.
Sure.
If that's all right.
Go ahead. Yes.
So when COVID broke out last year, we did some work with teams in different parts of the world. And what we do is we summarize the highest and lowest behavior scores. And the highest behavior scores that we find, can be, it depends on the team. But what we found in the low behavior scores were common kind of threads, things like having sufficient time to reflect on progress. People just, when they're working remotely, tend to do this less. And clarity on direction and remit. Now, what's shown here is that the orange bar is the average score that the team gave for this agree-disagree statement. And the focus here is always not on the individual, but on the team. Does the team have clarity on their direction and remit? And the shaded area underneath is the spread of scores. So the highest rating given was 50% and the lowest was 0. So these are really low scores, actually. And then we went to do another team, and that's where this thread starts coming through. Clarity on direction and remit, sufficient reflection on progress. Now, at the same time, you can see that this team has got a lot of psychological safety. There's positive and equal treatment in the team. They support each other, etc., etc. They're confident in their team success. But that theme, March, London, same thing. Those 3 results at the bottom there. A global team that we did again. So we were thinking there's something wrong with our technology here, and we were checking all of our formulas, but it's fine. Romania, even a team coming out there, back to the UK. So I just thought that was really interesting data to kind of look at in terms of what themes are coming out with different teams and different circumstances around alignment. And we don't have anything more than anecdotal at the moment, but I just thought it would be interesting to show that one.
Thank you. Well, we have a couple more objections to it. Well, Warren has come back to ask if, whether we should actually be seeking areas where people are misaligned rather than seeking alignment. So kind of to seek to understand where the misalignment is rather than kind of to force everybody to be aligned together.
Okay. Yeah, but I think
Warren, I'm interpreting your question. Tell me if I'm wrong. Okay, sorry. Yeah. Go ahead.
Yeah, no, I think that comes back to our previous point, where if you understand what's going wrong, there is a huge door opening. So imagine if a leader said to you, look, we're quite happy. We don't want to know what's going wrong because that's going to be a bit uncomfortable. We're just going to carry on not knowing. I mean, what would you think about that? You'd think, no, come on, let's really confront. Confront maybe is too strong a word. People don't like that word, but let's let's explore and discover the areas that do need improvement, or the areas that could be holding us back. That's misalignment, and that's where alignment work can be really useful.
Well, Colin has given us a comment that has been upvoted by everyone. So does the promotion of culture and the pressure to have cultural fit lead to a false picture of alignment, a better one than really exists? I mean, we think we are more aligned than we are. So I presume what he's saying.
I do believe that a lot of communication about culture and values is disengaging because it doesn't match the experience that people are living in the working environment. And what would be much better is if they were to measure culture by asking questions about behavior and to say, this is what we're doing well, and this is where we can improve in our context. So, and the cultural fit piece is interesting as well, because I know what it feels like to be in an organization where you don't fit, but you don't realize because you don't know what cultural fit is. I mean, when I was much younger, that concept, cultural fit, wasn't talked about very much. And you just kind of feel like you're fighting, and you feel like people don't get you, and etc. It's a horrible experience, actually.
Okay.
And asking people to fit in is rubbish, really. I think there's a fit that people can have broadly within an organization in terms of the industry they're working with and everything else. But if you really want diverse views, and if you really want different perspectives to bear that will allow people to learn more from each other, because there will be more perspectives to learn from, then people should bring their authentic selves to work. And understand the kind of cultural guidance, if you like, that help people understand what fits better to the context and the challenges that the company or the team is facing.
I actually have a couple of things that I object to what you've just said, right? The whole paragraph, right? So I will object to them one by one. There are more comments coming up, but I will show them in a while. The first is when you talk about culture and about fitting into culture or not fitting into culture. I would argue that often it's the person who doesn't fit into the culture that would actually be able to see with greater clarity what are the issues that need to be done and so on. Obviously, the problem really isn't that I can't fit into the culture. The problem is when I'm ostracized or in some way bullied because I'm not like everybody else. So that would be the first thing that I'm thinking about. Like, you say, yes, it's a horrible, but why is it a horrible experience? Why should it not be that, hey, maybe this person can give us a fresh viewpoint that we don't have before. That's what we're talking about, culture and diversity.
I would disagree that that's a disagreement, because I agree. And, I'm not saying something different. I'm just saying that people who do come from a different perspective and do have a different culture to bear are often treated as if they don't fit because, well, they don't. But there's nothing wrong with that, I think is what we're saying. There's nothing wrong with not fitting because there will be a norm or a kind of, a way we do things or what we believe around here, kind of norm. Yeah.
And I think the bigger sort of, in big organizations, it's hard to say what's the entire organization's culture, because sort of every little team, every department probably has a slightly different set of norms, and a lot of it may actually be decided by the leader. So actually kind of going organizational culture fit, I wonder whether, it even exists actually.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, and you can even get bubbles of culture where you put a group of people in a room and treat them differently and ask different things of them, and they can develop a whole kind of sort of like set of behaviors or a way of working that as soon as they go back into their workplace they won't exhibit. So culture is not one thing, indeed. I mean, it's there are subgroups and groups, and people adapt and merge in different situations. They go to a leadership team meeting and they become all quiet and reserved, and then they're laughy and jokey back in their own team meeting, and they go to see a customer and focus on quality. And culture is, especially these days, nebulous.
Well, I mean, Roy has spoken up to say that she doesn't believe that the two are mutually exclusive. That actually identifying misalignment and alignment, identifying misalignment is the essential step to alignment. But I am presuming Warren is actually saying that, we need to identify the misalignment, but we may or may not need to align. I mean, correct me if I'm wrong. Yes, he's just come up to say it sounds like there's both value in alignment and misalignment, and whether alignment itself is overhyped.
Well, so there's the process of alignment, there's the state of alignment and misalignment, there are skills of alignment. Yeah, I think alignment as an outcome is not overhyped. Misalignment root causes are arguably more valuable than alignment causes. But yeah, it depends what perspective we're talking from.
Okay, all right.
But
Tiffany,
yeah.
Sorry, you wouldn't go on. Good.
I was just going to say I agree with Roy on the previous point, but never mind. We've moved on.
This one, that there's value in both alignment and misalignment, and alignment is overhyped.
The one before that, from Roy.
The one before that, Roy. Okay, that misalignment and alignment is not mutually exclusive. Okay.
Yes, indeed. You need to know where you're misaligned in order to align. Indeed. Yeah, good one.
Well, Tiffany is talking about confront. Just now you say confront is not a good word. She thought confront is a great word. Well, I am the advocate of argument. So yes, I think confront is a great word too. But however, probe and experiment are also okay. And in her view, it's just like, what language helps to unlock the playfulness and the sharing aspect of effective teaming, and how must we learn to play in the sandbox as adults? That's a great idea.
Well, the word, you remember when we started off this discussion and we were talking about it being ironic, this agree, disagree kind of dynamic that you've got going here because it's so useful. I mean, we call it constructive challenge. Yes. Confront, I think, is a great word. I mean, I've learned a lot about this from the Dutch culture that I've been living in for the past years, where people are quite happy to confront each other, and that have no implication on the relationship between them at all. Whereas in the UK, it would be like a personal affront. But oftentimes I'm generalizing here.
No, I would argue that the British confront you just as much, but they confront you in the most, I would say, almost snide way. Like, the way that they say it's really I don't know how to put it. The kind of humor is funny, but at the same time, it's sharp. Well, at least I've been at the receiving end of a fair bit of it, and I thought it was quite funny.
I think what's underneath this, though, do you remember I was saying about anxiety transference, what you call entanglement, and people can either internalize or acknowledge or kind of reject, roughly speaking. I think the British expect people to internalize themselves. So for them, confrontation is much more personal and much more impactful on the relationship. So if somebody, if somebody thinks that they deserve an apology for something, if they don't hear the apology, they will be personally annoyed, rather than just acknowledge that somebody didn't apologize and that could be their thing, And so the word confront has different meanings for different people, although just disagreeing and challenging and everything that we're talking about is well needed. So that's why I like the serene view. But probe, experiment, that's good. I think the word that we could use is about constructive and objective and about safe challenge, where people don't need to make it a blame game. They just need to make it then, I observe this and therefore we can, rather than, and it's because fault, silos, animosity, blame. That's where I'd go.
I think I definitely agree with you about that. Well, Roy has said that Jim Collins argues that if you're members of a team to be on the same bus, heading in the same direction. So without alignment, you can never get to a place where your teams are performing at the highest level. It's going to be something that you agree.
I think there's something over your microphone at the moment because it's a little bit.
Oh, you can't hear me? Is it better now? Worse? Yeah. Okay. So I mean, Jim Collins says that you want members of the team to be on the same bus.
Yeah, I can see that.
Now it's fine. You heard that? Okay. So which part did you lose me on?
I heard it and I can read it, so that's fine.
No. I usually read it out. because I'm afraid it'll be blurry or whatever.
Oh,
There's like so many other things that is. So if you guys didn't hear it, like give me a shout out. I'll read it again. If not, I won't bother reading it. Basically, the whole idea is you have to be aligned to be headed in the same direction. Full stop.
well, and this is the main point. It's if alignment is so important, which clearly some very learned and experienced people are saying, and as the research is telling us, then why isn't it higher on the agenda? Why isn't it first and foremost? Why don't we have, alignment sessions? Why isn't alignment a standard? I would like to challenge that to the world in general, or to the working world in general, because this is a missed opportunity from my point of view.
I mean, I don't know that alignment is such a great idea, because I have been on so many aligned teams which are going in the wrong direction altogether and convinced that they are right. And a lot of the great stuff, like look, Gmail, for example, didn't come out of Google going like, hey, let's all be aligned, and this is the new direction we're going in. It came out of their one free day of play. And I think lots of stuff in Google came out of that. It came out of people who are thinking very differently from what everywhere else. Everyone is going in a bus in that direction, but I've decided that this is a good direction. And actually, a lot of these, exploratory directions have proven to be very useful for Google.
Yeah,
So
I mean, innovation and trying things, that's part of psychological safety. It's part of, you might argue, it's part of being better aligned to the real challenge in the marketplace and how people can best react to that with their performance in whatever they're doing. But I have been in teams. I was in one team where on the opposite side of things, it was a change team. They were looking at all of the software licenses around the group and having to create new software to detect where the licenses were so that they were able to disclose the licenses that they owned. And after 20 people, about 8 months of working, I think the budget would have been in its millions just for that alone. Steering group, international teams. They discovered there was another team in the same organization that had been doing the same thing. So we were canned. And it's just like, really. Now that is
like really, yes.
That is misalignment, though, at the very top level. That has these ramifications that go down the organization that are colossal. It's just a complete waste of time and money when you get into that kind of, level. So I think there are minor alignment issues and there are medium-sized alignment issues. There are alignment issues that haven't yet played out that can be mitigated against. And there are alignment issues that people are dealing with every day that are historic, kind of inherited alignment issues that people are having to, make up for and do the work after all the time. And there are talk about employee engagement. Of course, employee engagement is low when people feel like they're dealing with something that's not properly connected and they're having to deal with the fallout. And then they're being blamed for it in their performance review. So,
well, I do agree with you. I mean, that's brilliantly misaligned. I think there's brilliant issues with I picked that up from the British, like brilliant issues with communication, like brilliant communication there. Colin, who is another Brit, has told us, like, given us an example with the greatest respect. The one I used to always get from my partner is, that's really a fascinating point. Would you care to elaborate? It usually means he has no intention of ever hearing anything again. Yes.
To the slight defense of the British, they will use that language if they don't know how to say otherwise. But sometimes they actually do mean it is interesting. And sometimes they do have the greatest respect. But, if you've got somebody sitting on the other side of a table, kind of hands clasped like this, and they don't have the same goals as you, and they're trying to tell you something that's different, but they just don't know how. So they'll use that language, with the greatest respect.
With all due respect is what I was. I don't think they use with the greatest respect. The one I've heard is with all due respect.
There's
Because you're with you this much.
There's a table circulating, isn't there, on WhatsApp or LinkedIn, and with
yes,
the
I saw it too,
translations.
yes,
Yeah, it's great.
But I always used to get the that's a very fascinating point. Would you care to elaborate? Yes, so Colin says, back to the topic, misalignment can be a power play. I mean, divide and conquer, right? PM Johnson has a preference for chaos because people come to him in chaos. May I add that PM Johnson is not the only leader in the world who has used this tactic in his defense.
I agree, and there's not much we can do about those high-level power play in politics. But if you're in an organization, you are in a position of power and influence, then I think the minute that you can see that somebody is using misalignment in power play, I think that's, let's hope that the culture will back you up and that the structures of the organizations will back you up in calling that out, because the way to stamp this out is to be very clear about what you do expect, what is okay and what isn't okay, and then take action when something happens that isn't okay, like, people being divisive about how other teams connect with them in order to compete with them instead of collaborate.
Yeah. I think there's a lot of it is sometimes I don't know whether they are actually misaligned or they are simply refusing to align, because I don't want to understand you, because if I understand you, I have to go along with you. So I would rather say, I don't understand. I don't know where you're coming from, and
right,
and continue that. I think
that's a good example, actually. And I think that there's misalignment between teams is a particular issue.
Okay. And Roy has added to that to say that one is then sacrificing success for gaining power, and that's toxic for an organization. Roy, can I say this? I would say it depends on how you define success, because there is personal success and there's organizational or even team success, and the two may not be aligned since we're on alignment.
Yeah. And it's so funny. I think alignment is inevitable. Sorry, misalignment is inevitable. Just because of the fog, because of the biases, because of the interpretation. It's not as if we can prevent all of the misalignment. I mean, there's a lot you can do, as I say. But one of the things that came up to me recently was that alignment work, alignment conversations particularly, are better in bursts. Because, when you're in a team and there's a momentum, and you're making progress and people are discussing things and you need to move forward and there's not much time. And then somebody says, but how do you define that word? And it's just, and it's fine. And it's best practice, but it's just like the momentum goes, everybody goes onto this sideline.
No, actually, I had a conversation last week with I think 2 weeks ago with Eugen, and he's a guy who specializes in complexity, right? And specializes in finding very simple solutions to solve very complex problems. And he's somebody who says, never go into definitions, look at the behaviors and do the behaviors, because the moment you go into definitions, exactly what you said, right? That's where you can get into all manners of argument about the English language and never get any work done.
Well, and I think one of the fears about trying to align is that you can easily get caught up in the weeds when people go, oh, yeah, but I think this, but that's because of that. But my understanding was, and my interpretation comes from, and that entire thing is just anti-progress. It's great, but that's where I would really advocate for the facilitator. The facilitator can take a conversation, focus it, and help people out of the weeds back onto the emphasis of, okay, what are the different viewpoints? How do we move forward? What actions need to be taken best? What do we need to do differently? So because it can be so difficult. So I think the alignment process should be tabled as a separate session on a regular basis, where people can take the time out to say, actually, those definitions are different. We have a different understanding of this. I know something you don't, or you might know something I don't, etc., etc. That is a separate discussion that really needs a structure.
Tiffany has mentioned about there's nothing we can do about that. Did we mention that? And I don't actually remember saying it. I mean, either Lindsay or me saying it. Just let me know what's the context of this sentence. Because I don't remember either of us saying this. Do you remember saying this?
I don't think I remember saying that. I think
If I'm going to blame my age for it, like, oh, I'm old now, I can't remember stuff, tell me, tell me again. where
I
we
would
sit.
say, I would correct that a little bit to say that there's nothing relevant to our team progress that we can't talk about. But there's plenty of things that you shouldn't talk about.
Okay, all right. So, but not really, Tiffany. Tell us where we set it in and what's the context behind
Yeah,
it.
more challenge, always welcome.
Yes. But Roy said that if someone is in it for themselves, then he will never want them in his organization, on his team, because there is no I in team. And actually, Roy, can I say this? I think you're never going to hire anybody, to be frank. Everyone is in it for themselves. I hate to tell you this, but everyone
I
is
disagree.
in it for themselves. Yeah, why? I mean, look.
I disagree that that's exclusive. I think it's always an and. It's never, because we're still talking in black and white terms. People are in it for themselves. I mean, they have to be to a certain point. I mean, that's why they are. They have to look after themselves. They have to look after the people that they're with. But at the same time, and they can have a we attitude, and there's a lot of balance between when is something that needs to be good for the team and when is something that needs to be we, and that's the constant negotiation that is going on based how people understand relationships and responsibilities to relationships, which is really, really interesting. But if somebody has let's say, I'm sure Roy would rephrase this then, just because he's just writing a text here, so it's easy just to write something simple. But I think the statement is more that if somebody has more of a preference for serving themselves than the team, they're not welcome. And I would totally agree with that.
He says it's a longer conversation, then he will completely agree. So you have a choice, Roy. You can type it all out to us, or we can invite you like right now here on stage, and you can say it, right? So tell me if you want to come on stage. I'll send you a link.
Come on, Roy.
I mean, come, Roy, come and disagree with us. Bring it on, Yes. So if you want to, you can type it. If you don't want to, just drop me a comment, and I'll send you a thing. It says, look at the highest performing teams in the world, Navy SEALs or Special Ops. Look, Roy, they kill people. I would hate for that to be the epitome of our human teams. Like, please, can we bring better examples?
Do you remember when Simon Sinek talked about the SEALs, the Navy SEALs, and he said that when he analysed why they performed so highly, is because they were not all made up of all-star performers. They were made up of people who would rather perform lower and support their team members than look out for themselves and excel on their own. So I would disagree with the Navy SEALs as being an example of people who look out for themselves, if that's what you're saying.
No, I think he's trying to say that people there's no I in team, and that people should look out for organizations. I think, okay, Roy, if I'm putting this into your mouth, like, tell me about it. So Tiffany has come back to say that that's where we were talking about when top level leaders have their own agendas, and then you said that there's nothing that I or we can do about it, right? So I think it's the Boris Johnson and a certain Mr. T's conversation, I think.
Well, I don't feel like I've got any influence over political leaders. There's nothing I can do about that.
Yeah, well,
vote is the only thing, I guess.
Yes, I think. Okay, what I think about politics is I think that the people who should never be there are there because the system promotes only people unworthy to the position. Like the stuff that you have to do to even get there proves you to be unworthy to be a great.
Well, and that stands for business as well. Yeah. I mean, you've got to be a sacrificing, self-serving, determined. I mean,
Didn't like they found that the CEOs have like twice the number of psychopaths as anybody else. Like the one job with the most percentage of psychopath is CEO. They have double that of the general population. Yes,
I know. So I suppose the question is now, is it possible to have CEOs who promote the team, who stand for the organization first. It is, but I think there will be more of them in future. Put it that way. I think there's more awareness about the benefits and of that. So anyway, Roy has come back to us. Oh no.
Yes, Roy says he'll be welcome. I've already sent you a message, Roy, with the link to be on stage. And you can only use Google Chrome, just to let you know. Yes, so Warren has says that he thinks there are many eyes in a team, and the goal is to get all the eyes working together. Warren, I'm with you.
I'm not. I disagree.
Okay,
I totally disagree. Because
Yes.
that's when you get a group of individuals who are self-serving, who are not behaving as a team, but who technically sit in a team. And that's destructive then, because that's where the silos come in. That's a team of silos. They're not interested in each other. They're not going to support each other. They're not going to complement each other. They're not interested in even looking at each other's agendas so much. And you get that more at the top of an organization because they lead different functions that aren't as and they can spend all their time being introspective and looking out for developments in the outside world and being totally consumed with their silo. But I don't think that's the healthy team.
Okay, well, I actually think that, the whole idea is everybody is out for themselves, but like since we're on the topic of alignment, is getting the alignment between the team or the organization goal with my personal goal. Because, for instance, I'll just give you a very egregious example, right? So I am violently allergic to cigarette smoke, and so for me to work for an organization like Philip Morris, which manufactures that, will be very out of alignment with my personal goals. So when that happens, then I have a real issue. But if on the other hand, right, for me to go and be sort of self-sacrificing, and I would just sacrifice myself for the team and so on, A, that's never gonna last, and B, I don't know many people who are like that, because even Mother Teresa's not panning out to be somebody like that. If you've read the stuff written on her, so that's kind of where I'm coming from.
Let me share something else. I've just been a bit distracted.
Yes, please go ahead. I don't know where Roy is. Roy, I've sent you the message. Like, come on stage. Tell us the long version of it. Yes, but yes, thank you for agreeing with me, Colin. Let's stop looking at train killers for our examples.
I thought you welcomed people who disagreed. Thank you for disagreeing with me.
No, I welcome people who agree and disagree with me. So that's the whole idea of an argument, right? All right, let me put what you have up. This is what you wanted to show, right?
Okay, so let's look at the kind of ways that we show up alignment for teams at the executive level, and how we value that they interact from an alignment perspective. So you don't need to look at the results, but look at these statements. It's talking about people offer an informed opinion across functional areas. So that again is between team members. People communicate a clear, compelling, and consistent storyline, formally and informally. So that's consistent. That's people being aligned on the storyline. People in the team seeing their individual goals in service of the shared goals. Again, emphasis on the team rather than responsibility than the individual. That they are confident about achieving their goals together, their shared goals, that they reciprocate well, that they have trust and interdependence to deliver, that they balance a short-term focus on driving the long-term health of the organization. So that's thinking not about their own objectives, but the organizational objectives. They seek diverse perspectives, so they want to include people. And they use their power to help other people be stronger. So that entire thing is all about how a team looks when it's behaving in service of we rather than I. And there's probably not anybody who's on the call. Why are you? And I know that you said there's many eyes in the team, and the goal is to get all of the eyes working together. And I know that what you mean then is to get them to work as a team. So I think we are in agreement there, and that this is what it would look like then. this is what it would look like when people are doing that. I just wanted to kind of pull out that.
Yes. So Roy said you couldn't find a message. So Roy, I sent you a connection request that comes with a message and also an email. So if you still can't find it, then you've got to blame LinkedIn at this point.
Yeah,
right?
tell you what, you need to get Roy.
Anymore.
You need to get Roy himself on as a host.
Yeah, sure, Roy. You can come on in another week and like fight with us about this. We should not be on a team. Yes. Okay, so what else do we want to say at this point in time? It's 9. It's actually coming to the top of the hour. We are waiting for Roy to make a special guest appearance. But is there anything else that you object to in this point? Actually, I wanted to bring up something that Jacob said. Jacob isn't here tonight, but he said we can't use the word mental fog because it's just not operationally defined. It's a useless phrase because you can't fight a mental fog because you haven't defined it well enough. Oh, here comes Roy. Hello, Roy. Yes. He said, I don't see you, Roy. Mental fog because it's just not. Okay, Roy, I'm sorry. You have to mute us on the other side because what's going to happen is there will be feedback after a while if you don't do that. So I'm sorry, Roy. I will put you back on when you've muted us.
And then
the other one of us talking.
And then if you get on and you've got a grey screen, go to Cam and Mike to select the right camera because then yeah. But okay. I don't like the term mental fog, and I didn't put that forward actually because I actually agree with Jacob. Mental fog implies that somebody is confused rather than the fog around misalignment that is the way that people bring themselves to the shared space. So that's a very kind of summary of the terminology there from my perspective. But yeah, Jacob's got a good point.
All right. I'm just going to there you comes Roy.
So that's very kind of summary.
Good morning, Lindsay. Good morning, Serene.
Yes, good morning. So you are here to tell us the long version of your points. Come. All right. I'm just going to there you comes Roy.
Oh, yeah. So that's very kind of summary.
Good morning, Lindsay. Good morning,
You
Serene.
have to put us on mute. Oh, he's gone. Okay. We'll talk to Roy maybe another time. It's really coming to an hour. Actually, it's past an hour. Is there any final objections? But I actually kind of agree, right? So all this, what would you call all this mental stuff? Misalignment? Because earlier on I said shared mental models, and you're like, no, they're not shared mental models. So what, misaligned mental models?
Well, we call it misalignment. Some people call it conflict. You could call it interpersonal dissonance. I wouldn't say there's a specially coined term yet, but I'm looking for one to emerge because I'll use it all the time. So.
All right. Maybe you should coin one, Lindsay.
Well, we're working on it.
Yes.
Yeah. We're going to go for disconnects because I think people can identify with that. Disconnects between people.
Okay. All right. Okay, so I am still waiting to see if Roy's going to come back and give us his blurb. But if not, then what would you like to say? In summary of all this discussion, what would you like to say as the last thing for people to remember?
I kind of think a lot has been said, actually. We've been through a really interesting discussion going right from politics round to corporate culture, leadership and teaming. But I think the fundamental thing is that I think misalignment or disconnects between people is under-recognized, and it's the biggest opportunity facing us in this remote working world to achieve more rewarding, better results in a shorter space of time that cost less ultimately. So it's a source of competitive edge. It's a key instrument or key means of improving performance, and I think it's high time that we took a good look at it as today's opportunity.
Yes, we welcome Roy back. Roy, yes, come tell us about it.
Apologies, I had Chrome up and Explorer at the same time, and the echo was deafening. So
yes,
and I apologize for my look because it's morning in Philadelphia, and I was never planning to be seen.
No, you look fantastic. We have totally no problem in the way you look. You're rosy. You look in the pink of health. Tell us, what is it that you wanted to tell us that you couldn't type in?
So I think that the key point here, and putting what Special Forces or Navy SEALs do for a living, if you study teams and you understand how important the performance of teams are, there are no better, higher performing teams in the world, as Simon Sinek would say, than a Navy SEAL team, because none of them are about themselves. None of them want to be the superstar. Everyone works for a common mission, a common goal. They are completely aligned in what they do and how they execute and how they perform. And if you want to build a high-performing team in your organization, you have to have the right mindset, as Lindsay discussed at the front end. You have to have the appropriate behaviors, the culture that allows for that. And if the combination of those things can work, then your teams can perform at a high level. If there's misalignment in the team will never be as successful as it can be unless everyone is completely aligned. And yes, people have their own lifestyle and their own view, but a team cannot perform if everybody thinks that they are the superstar. So I would push strongly back on this belief that if everyone is motivated only by their enlightened self-interest, then they shouldn't be on a team. They should be out there on their own, doing their own thing. They don't need to be part of a culture, part of an organization. They can all be sole proprietors. But if you want to function in an organization, now there are culture, difference between national cultures, yes, and organizations struggle with that. But the culture within the organization is separate than people's individual cultural perceptions. So if you want a strong organization, you need to have strong culture, and you need alignment within that culture. If our organization isn't the place that you fit, then you shouldn't be there. Go someplace where you fit. Go work where you fit. Don't try to fit into a place that isn't for you just because you're motivated by your own need for money. I get that people have to work. You need to earn money. You need to have a living. But you should try to do that in a place where you're happy, not in a place that is toxic or a place where you just can't fit in. You're not going to change a huge culture in one sitting. It takes a lot of time. Ask Francis Frey at Harvard about changing the culture of Harvard Business School. It just doesn't happen overnight. It's a struggle and it's work, but you want to ultimately get to alignment to achieve it.
I guess my objection to that really isn't so much that I think everybody should be a superstar on the team. No, really, that's not it. But it's that I would say that everyone who goes to work, or everyone in most teams, okay, so I don't know the Navy SEALs enough to know whether it applies to them, but I would say in most organizations that I deal with, people are self-motivated. The vast majority of people are self-motivated. And I would say that, if you have to build teams out of people who will sacrifice themselves for the greater good and the greater team, then you're building very little teams, because there aren't that many of those people, in number one. And
Right.
I would disagree
I think,
I would disagree strongly.
I
think people want to be part of a family. They want to be part of a tribe, and they'll do those things to work together. There needs to be that human connection. What are the behaviors that are necessary for people to come together as a tribe? Human beings exist today. We inhabit the planet because we learned that we had to come together, that collectively we are much stronger than we are individually. Individually, we die. Collectively, we survive. And so anthropologically, we've always been about coming together. The question is, how strongly do we come together to be as successful as we can be?
Well said. And in addition to that, I don't think anyone has to sacrifice to be a member of a good team. It's not about sacrifice. It's just about thinking as a team rather than as an individual.
I think I'm more of the opinion that the two it's like what you said earlier about N, that you have to be, because I would.
The line
is,
it's just stuck for a second there. Well, we can agree with each other meantime, can't we?
Lindsay, good to see you back in the Netherlands.
Yeah, nice to see you. Let's hope Serena comes back online.
Yeah. No, I think that what I thought was the interesting comment in the conversation was the difference between the alignment of a team and the alignment of the culture. That teams can operate very effectively as a team, but if they are misaligned with the culture, I think Serene made a very good point there when she brought that up, right? That you still need to have that cultural alignment as well.
Well, yeah, but I agree that there's more than one culture we're operational in an organization at any one time, and but there is an umbrella culture indeed, and it should fit the context.
Yes.
Often they don't, of course, because they're outdated or they're dreamed up by somebody who may not be aligned with the context. We could go on for a long time.
Yeah. Well, I don't know if Serene's coming back. I don't know if there's even anyone else listening.
Well, you know what? I don't even know how this is being hosted if she's not here. But it's on an external platform. But I'm pretty sure she's going to come back into the room. But it is 1:15.
Yeah, it's long. It was a half hour I had on my calendar. So.
Well, if you need to go, I'll stay on the line to say goodbye to Serena, and but otherwise, whatever you like. It's been a really interesting session, and
yeah, I thought it was good.
We're both passionate about alignment, as you know.
A little bit. I wish I could. I didn't mean to bring up the military in a way that was counterproductive.
I don't think.
I wish I could have thought of because I was thinking channeling Simon Sinek a little bit, and I didn't want to. When I think of high performing teams, I sort of think about that, not because they're in the business of killing people, but they're in business of executing, and sometimes they're about saving lives, not just murdering people. So, but it might have been could have probably used a better example. I have to think of a better example.
Well, it has its points. I really like his connection to those teams there, but he was mainly doing it from the position that you shouldn't have all stars in a team because then they're focused on them. Then they're more likely to be focused on their own performance to maintain that all-star kind of status.
Have you seen? So I'm not. This isn't channeling military intelligence here, but Stanley McChrystal wrote a book called Team of Teams.
I haven't seen that.
It's excellent. There she is.
I'm going to stop criticizing the Navy SEAL because I've never had my entire laptop crash in the middle of a live stream in 3 years of doing this. So yes, no, the Navy SEALs are good. They're very good. They're very nice. I'm not saying anything bad about them. No, I'm not saying anything anymore. Yes, we were closing that discussion. Yes.
Yeah.
The Pentagon removed you from your live stream.
I have no idea. The whole laptop crashed and nothing worked anymore. The whole thing just died, and I had to force close everything.
Hey, Serene, she just crashed again.
Well, that's because she keeps talking about the Navy SEALs.
Yeah, I think, Is she in Hong Kong?
I'm not sure, actually.
It could be the Chinese government not wanting any of us to talk about the Navy SEALs. That's possible.
Well, I think we're kind of done anyway. We've had a really great conversation.
Oh, there she is.
Oh, Serena, I think we're kind of done anyway. Are you? I can't hear you.
I can't hear you.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah, I can hear you. Yes.
Now you froze.
Listen, I have to go now.
I have to run too, Lindsay. It's called Team of Teams.
Yep.
It's by Stanley McChrystal, and it gets into the issue of his underwriting theme is what used to be complicated is now complex.
Yeah.
And now you need much more integrated teams in order to be successful in a complex world versus what was once a complicated world.
Good call.
Yeah, it's an excellent book.
Okay, thanks very much for that.
I look
So-
forward, Serena. I will look for. We can do. I would look forward to having this conversation. I think it would be fun. It's intellectually stimulating. So
It is. We'll connect soon, Roy.
all right, take care, Lindsay. Bye, Serena.
Yes. Bye. Bye.
Did we like all decide to leave? Okay, all right. Well, thank you very much for coming by. And, I'm sorry for tonight. I mean, I've had 2 laptop crashes and it's been terrible. And I'm sorry for all of you if you're still here. Well, thank you very much for being here. And I hope next week will be better. I will not say anything else about the seals. And next week, I'm having somebody who is a psychiatrist come over to talk a little bit really about what's going to be, like, are we really going to be better together or should we be better alone? So see you next week for the Serene View. Bye-bye.